Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Well, we've been having our winter retreat now for just about a week, and must say I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far. Things are settling down, and been meditating most of the day, and it's been really nice. Community's in good harmony. A lot of sincere practitioners around, both on the monastic side and the lay side. We've got a wonderful and very generous support crew this year, and as we have in other years, but this year seems especially so. So it's so far so good. It's kind of nice. We are doing kind of organizing our readings. We're doing readings every day, and we've been organizing them around three basic ideas, three themes. The first one is softening the mind. That's going to be maybe 10 days or so in the first couple of weeks. The next one is focusing the mind. And the third one is letting go, freeing the mind, you might say. This is just a tool for how we can approach the meditation practice. And this first phase that we're in right now, softening the mind, we've been focusing so far on faith and loving kindness. Later on, we'll do some readings on some of the other new sattis. I think perhaps reflections on generosity, as well as virtue. And this is a very nice practice to be doing. I remember when I first heard this phrase, the soft mind, with regards to meditation. I didn't like it. It sounded kind of wimpy and a little bit corny. It's like the soft mind, you know. I didn't come here to develop a soft mind. Thank you very much. But now that I've started practicing, now that I've been practicing meditation for some time, I have a much more appreciation for what it's getting at. In the modern world today, these days, the soft mind doesn't have a big place to play. It's a real dog-eat-dog world, and very much what is praised is actually quite the opposite. The mind which is ambitious, which isn't afraid on stepping some toes, if that's what it takes to get ahead. I remember Ajahn Pasano, when he first came to America and was considering coming here to California, or maybe it was after his first trip to California, and anyways, he went back to Thailand and shared his experience about America. And he said that in San Francisco he saw this billboard, this big, massive billboard, and it was like a red billboard, and there was a man's face, like the side of his cheek, on some pavement. And his glasses kind of all crumpled up, this kind of round glasses, and a boot, like someone's foot on his face. And the kind of saying that kind of went with it was something like, "There's a reason we're number one in our field." You know, we do what it takes to get ahead, something like that. And this was designed to inspire confidence and faith in the whoever it was that wanted to do business with his company. And I just remember thinking, God, I'm never going to go there and be part of that culture. Now, this is maybe, 15 years ago, and I have a feeling now that sort of business model is, I think, slightly dated, but it's still the leftovers of that attitude. You see it around us, and people just trying to, basically, they're not really concerned about, often enough, they're not concerned about their neighbors, not concerned about the planet, not concerned about the community in which they live. And what matters is that they they do what is needed to get the bottom line taken care of. And so that's kind of the hard mind. You might think of that as like the hard mind. And the hard mind it's an insensitive mind. It's a mind which can't really be too concerned about people's feelings because, you've got a business to run, a company to run. It's a mind which is very much, like I said, bottom line oriented, results. It wants results. And it's trained to think that way. I mean, you go through, when I was going to school, I wasn't trained to be a sensitive person. I mean, all that mattered was if you could manipulate, if you can manipulate the scene in the right way, say what the teachers want you to say, and in the right way, then you get through the system. I wasn't encouraged to, at least not at school, to open the heart and to take note of the world in which I live, at least not very much. So we have this tendency to want results, and maybe you don't see how disastrous that is on our mind until you start to meditate. If you come to the mind with this sort of logistical approach, kind of strategic thinking, and you sit down and you're going to get results based on this method that you have, your pet method. Not that doesn't have its place from time to time, but for the most part, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, because the mind is incredibly complex. And the causes that go into a still mind are vast. And very often, you'll sit down and you'll meditate. You'll be doing everything right. You went through the Visuddhimagga and all the little steps that they laid out for you. You've kind of fulfilled them all, and you sit down to meditate, and the mind is just all over the place. And conversely, there'll be times when you will come out of a conversation very worldly, maybe it's been a busy day, and you'll sit down to meditate and you have no idea why, but the mind just goes into this calm kind of bliss, and you don't really get it. And I'm not denying that there's causality that applies to the mind. Certainly there is, but it's simply very complex, and it's not something you can easily plan out. So the soft mind is a way of approaching, beginning with yourself. It's a way of approaching the mind and approaching the body with a sort of gentleness and an acceptance. Recognizing that this mind doesn't belong to you. It's got a history of 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years perhaps. And all of that is now finished, it's done with, it's in the past, there's nothing you can do about it. And what you're left with is just this present moment. And it's very much, it doesn't belong to you. It's going to behave to a large extent the way it wants to. And it's hard. It's not easy to calm the mind and to brighten the mind and make it peaceful. So the gentle mind is a sort of the mind that can embrace where you are at the present moment. And it can kind of approach who you are and your situation, your circumstances, with a very forgiving attitude and without any demands. You're not making demands on the mind. You're not insisting that it be a certain way. You have to be able to be with yourself before you can really start to meditate skillfully. So this process of starting with a soft mind is a very skillful image. This kind of soft, warm, fuzzy. And again, it's not that we're trying to somehow convince ourselves that we have this kind of soft space inside of us, but it's the energy that we bring to our meditation. It's how we approach the mind. we approach it in a way which is soft and gentle and patient. Just a very good image is like the way you approach a child. It's not you. You can't necessarily tell the child how to behave. At least, maybe you can force it to behave in a certain way. But if you want the child to do something from within, you've got to be very gentle with it, and you've got to kind of guide it and encourage it and make it see something for itself, so that it will then behave in a way that's good for it. If you just tell it to do something, well, okay, you may be able to kind of bully a child into kind of behaving for a day or for a while, but it won't take long before the child rebels, disbehaves, and may even act in ways which are positively harmful to you and to itself. And the mind is very similar. It's got its own energy, its own pattern, its own rhythm, and we come to it we have these ideals, beautiful ideals, valuable, meaningful ideals. We want to calm it, we want to brighten it, we want to make it content. But you just can't tell it to be that way, and you can't force it to be still. So to that extent, it's like we have this child in our mind. It's very good at throwing tantrums. It's very good at doing its own thing. And if you want to win the trust of a child, you have to learn how to listen to it and to share space with it. And so that's what we have to do with the mind. We have to share space with it. We've been touching on the themes of faith so far. Faith in the Buddha, in the Triple Gem. And now we're touching on loving kindness. And loving kindness, of course, is loving kindness. When you have loving kindness for someone or some being, it starts with like an encounter. You have to face the being. It's like if you have love for a person or an animal or something, you have to first you look at the being, you encounter it, and that's the first step. And this is why loving kindness can be have a softening influence. Because the first thing you have to do is you have to encounter yourself. You have to look at where you're at and who you are. And it starts with, very often, how often is it the case that, especially as practitioners, something hasn't worked the way we wanted it to. And we've made a mistake. We've screwed up. We've said what we hoped we wouldn't say to someone we love, and now we're angry with ourselves. And that anger is a hindrance. This ill will towards oneself. This sense that we have these very high expectations on ourselves around our behavior, and we can be very unforgiving. What loving kindness has to be based on, like all the Brahma Viharas, is it's based, especially when it's regarding other people, it's based on this principle of empathy. This sense that everybody is in the same boat. And right now you may be, say, the prime of life, in your 30s, healthy. You may be in your 70s, maybe quite unhealthy. You may be a teenager. And yet we're all in the same boat. And what I mean by that is we all have a heart that feels, and we all have this condition that we don't really understand. this body, this mind. We don't know where it came from. We don't know why it's here, really. And it's all, for me, it's always been this puzzle, this amazing thing to ask myself is, why is it that I was born in these circumstances? Why am I in this body, Canadian, to my family, Christian family? And why wasn't I born in Africa? To, say, parents who didn't have enough food? Or why wasn't I born in Russia to a pair of lesbian parents? Or why wasn't I born to in Sudan in the midst of a civil war? And that's really a good thought, and we should think about that a lot. Usually what happens is we can coast along in life. We can live, you're born and you've got this world you take for granted, this body that you think is yours, and you're kind of living your life. And like I said, the heart can become quite insensitive. You can lose the capacity to feel in this world very easily. And what it takes often to come back to the heart is, sadly enough, what it takes is some kind of misfortune. It takes something like, what happens when tragedy strikes? What's it like when it's your child who commits suicide? Or what's it like when it's your brother who comes down with cancer? Or when you've lost your job and your wife has left you or your husband has left you? What happens is your world can sometimes be completely thrown upside down. The carpet is totally pulled out from under your feet. What you've taken for granted is suddenly you realize you had no right taking it for granted. Even things like your child. You think it's your child, and then at the age of 16, she's gone. Fact was, it was never your child to begin with. And somehow you forgot that. The child was born, beautiful child, you love it. And it's growing up and it's so lovely. And it's beautiful to watch it grow and learn and grow into an adult. And then suddenly it might be cut short for some reason. And that was always the case, that was a possibility. It was never your child. So usually what happens when we're in these kind of difficult situations, the first thing, it's like you feel like, why me? It seems unfair. And of course, it's not unfair. The world, there was no guarantees right from the day one. Ajahn Sumedho, he's got this line, sometimes people come to him and say, why me? And he'll say, because you were born. Because you were born. Once you're born, everything is fair game, and anything can happen. So the first kind of coping mechanism you have is what? I think there's There's this kind of list. I can't remember what it is, but there's like denial. First, you try and deny it. Then there's anger. And then there's depression or something like that, and then bargaining fits in there. You try and make a deal with God. If just God will please let you have. Somehow things will get better, and then you'll go to church every week or whatever. And it's almost like all these steps are ways of avoiding falling into truth. The truth is, the child was never yours to begin with, just in that example. The truth is, your partner had the right to leave you, because it's her life or his life. The truth is, this body can come down with any disease at any time. And really, I have very little say in it. And that was always that case. That's always been the way it is. And when you fall into that state, that's when you start to have the capacity to empathize, because you realize, the state that I'm in is the state that I was always in, and everybody else is in as well. We're subject to anything. Anything can happen. So Buddha has this reflection. He says, whenever you see somebody in good fortune or in bad fortune, he says samsara is vast, is large, and in this countless round of rebirths, you've been everything, good and bad. You've been the king of Thailand, or the king of some country. You've been wealthy, you've been poor, you've been male, you've been female, you've been everything. And whenever you see a being in any state, you should say, I too have been like that. And if rebirth is something that you can't quite take on because it is a foreign concept to many, you can at least say, I could be like that. There's no reason why I'm not born in that situation. And that's when the heart breaks open, and that you realize that the heart is sort of a universal thing, and we all have the same capacity for pain. And when pain, whether it's emotional or physical, reaches its maximum point, for me, anyways, when I've had these experiences, all there is I don't like. There's just everything. You're blind, and there's just one perception. It's like this feeling, I hate. And that could be a feeling based on anything could cause that. It may be, this tragedy or that tragedy or something might happen, but the result is I hate this feeling, and that hatred we're all subject to. I mean, the object will be different, but it's I can't bear this. And that's a human thing, and it's almost, it feels almost like bad news that yes, actually you can bear it. And painful situations is something we go through, all of us, sooner or later. And that's not a bad thing, actually. That's the way it is. And we can't deny it, or we can, but there's no point in denying it. We can't bargain our way out of it. At the end of the day, there's only one course of options, and that's accepting it. And that's when the heart can really break open, and you start to realize, I wouldn't wish this on anybody, and that other beings may not experience something like this pain, this hurt, this sorrow. And that's when this capacity for deep empathy can start to surface and arise. I want to add, just so you don't get too kind of depressed here, it's also possible to use your wisdom and your imagination to appreciate these facts as well. You don't have to kind of go right into the pits of hell to feel to sort of feel the oneness, if you will, of the human heart, or the existential, what it means to be and to love and to hate. But it's a sad truth that often enough that's what it takes. That's what it takes to realize. I mean, this isn't a game. Life isn't a game. This is the real deal here. And this is such a rich field. I mean, say take death, for instance. Death is something that comes to all of us. And sometimes some people die when they're in the womb. Some people die when they're teenagers. A friend of mine died when I was 16. Another friend died of HIV when she was in her 20s. You can die at any age, 30, 40. But whenever you die, at whatever age, it's interesting because there's only one thing to lose. And And that's one thing, and that's the present moment. And whether you're 15 or 115, there's only the present moment, and that's all there is to lose. Everything else is in your head. Everything else is imagination, it's future, it's possibility, it's memory. And the present moment is all that you have to lose. The future was never yours. And the past is also never yours. The past is simply a fiction that we create in our heads moment by moment to make the present moment sensible. So in one sense, this isn't a depressing thing, because it's the foundation of the spiritual life. Is this notion of equality on a very big scale. In the big picture, there's nobody who's better than anybody else. This is not the case ever. If you're somebody who has a great deal of spiritual development, you could lose that. This is not. It's not like simply. It's not like the Hindu notion of just evolution, where it's like gets better from here on in, and until you're enlightened. Moment by moment, we're charting a course, and wisdom waxes and it wanes, and that's something that we have to care for. The Buddha, there's this one teaching. I remember when I first heard this, I was almost aghast. At first, I thought, what a harsh thing to say. But the Buddha says, the loss of relatives is a small thing. But the loss of wisdom is the greatest loss. And that rings true to me very much so. In time, at first, I found that very difficult to accept, and I almost thought that I can't, in my very early years, I thought I almost couldn't believe a Buddha would say that. It seemed so harsh. And now it seems to me a very compassionate thing to communicate. Wisdom is that valuable. Relatives, they come and go. Their experience, their relationships are temporary. So this softness, or this empathy, this ability to empathize, this is what forms the foundation for the precepts. Just as I don't like it when people say hurt me, steal from me, cheat on me, lie to me. Those are hurtful things, and I detest it when it happens to me. And it's through this recognition of our common oneness, our common qualities, that we say, you know what, this has to stop. I'm not going to, people can go ahead, if they want to cheat me and do this and do that, that's fine. But I'm not going to contribute to that game. I'm not going to play that game. And I'm going to, from here on in, I'm going to do my best at not causing turmoil in the world. Not contributing to that. And this is a sign when we start to sense that and intuit that basically we have to take responsibility here. That's the spiritual life is starting to open for you. It shows that you're getting weary of simply putting yourself first. And that you're starting to take your spiritual journey seriously. So I guess this is kind of now that I think about it, kind of a gloomy reflection. But Okay, I think that's fair enough, because it's the time every now and then is ripe and appropriate for gloomy reflection, because I used to give them all the time, and it's been a while. So this afternoon we did our Patimokkha recitation up at the Mub, and I gave a reflection. We were sitting there. There was, say, 15 monks or so, whatever the number is, 15, 16, 17 of us. A couple of novices and a couple of Anagarikas, and I said, 60 years from now, everybody in this room will be dead. And sitting here will be a complete new set of monks. Say 15 monks, 2 brand new novices, 2 brand new Anagarikas. They'll have just finished a Patimokkha perhaps, and the senior monk will be giving a reflection. And he might be giving this exact same reflection that I'm giving right now. And after the Patimokkha, I went outside, and Ajahn Sanyama was commenting. He goes, they might be giving the same reflection, but they also might be sitting there talking about all kinds of worldly stuff and stuff that's completely not related to the goal or to Buddhist practice. And that was a nice reflection for me, because one of the things I was trying to communicate was how, this Buddhist practice is very special, and it's very fragile. And if we're going to see it through to another generation, and not only one more generation, hopefully generation after generation will follow us, an entirely new group of monks, of lay people, sitting here listening to the Dhamma. And hopefully it will be the same Dhamma. Hopefully it won't be teachings that will simply reflect the fads of the day. But they'll be true to what the Tathagata, the Buddha, spoke. And they'll be carrying on the message and the path that will lead to peace and calm and freedom. And if it's going to happen, for the most part, if it's going to happen because we as a community, monks, by community I mean lay and monastic, will be committed to the path and will be practicing sincerely and will be dedicated to the path. And sometimes we can think about, say, loving kindness, and we can think about having compassion and love for ourselves, or compassion and love for the community or the people we're living with, the family. But it's also the case that generations to come are going to grow out of the soil that we are now currently cultivating. And it's truly worth reflecting on that, if we're going to contribute to that. What they say in I think in business management, they mention how a successful business has to have a long-term vision. And in fact, even with people, they say that the happier people tend to have a longer vision for what they want with their life, as opposed to just living for the moment. And by living for the moment, I don't mean mindful awareness of the moment. I mean just like living it up and responding to moods and indulging their moods. There's this kind of long-term vision. And so too, the sasana, this Buddhist teachings are very precious. And they're not precious because there's anything magical about the ceremonies or the robes or the rituals. But it's precious because it calms the heart, and it creates a sense of coolness in the heart. Religion in general does this, but Buddhism has very specific tools that are very unique and precious. And we have a great opportunity to care for that, for this sasana, for this religion, if you want to call it a religion. So out of a desire to see beings be happy, both ourselves and others, and really what's the difference, It's not really, if you're just in this for yourself, because you want to, you want to get your piece together, well, you have that right, actually. It's you can do that. And that's not even necessarily contrary to the Buddha's teaching. But you're not going to be as successful, I'd like to propose, at doing that than you will be if you have the sense of you're doing this not just for you, but you're doing this for beings in general. You can't really even articulate it, because there's no one person that I'm doing this for, including myself. There's not beings now or in the future. It's wherever there's a capacity for pain, for the conscious experience of pain. I want my life be dedicated to easing that. That's the noble aspiration that I hope to live by, and that's the aspiration. And we can plant that in our hearts and say, right, this is what I'm gonna commit to this, and what's gonna happen, I don't know. Am I gonna succeed? Am I gonna fail? Maybe I'll succeed 10%, 20%, maybe 100%. Maybe I'll fail in the short run, but succeed in the long run. Maybe I'll succeed in the short run and the long run. Maybe I won't succeed, but maybe something I'll say will actually help somebody else succeed. And like I said, once I die, the difference between me and you it's just mine. It's just head games, really. It's not. There's no difference. So this is where we have to trust the intention. We have to trust the power of the Dhamma, that there is something in the Dhamma, it's opanayiko, it's leading onwards. There's something inherent in the teachings where if you give yourself to them, there's a causal process that is part of the system. It's a wheel, it's a movement, there's something in it that is self-sustaining. When the Dhamma is applied to with sincerity and commitment. That's my faith. And sometimes I can look and say, well, geez, 20 years I've been doing this, and do I feel happy with the results? It's hard to answer. Sometimes I say, well, yeah, of course I do. Sometimes I say, well, I sort of would have liked it to be, I would have liked to have been enlightened a long time ago, frankly. But at the end of the day, the point is, I really do trust this principle, the principle of causality. There's nothing else we can work with. I mean, if causality isn't what we're going to use the basis for finding happiness, if we're not going to have faith in that, then what's the point? I mean, nothing matters. So, faith in causality, faith in karma, faith in the triple gem, faith that this is going to be a benefit to someone somehow, because that's the nature of my intention, and I can only hope that I can skillfully mold it as we go along, and make it wiser, make it more powerful, make it more potent, make it more effective. And when the fruits will ripen, I just don't know, and that's okay, because I just don't know, and that's what else can I do? So those are some thoughts that maybe you can take away and reflect on, and maybe something will resonate with you and give you some energy and encouragement in your practice. I'll leave you with that tonight.